Alright, welcome back to Mirror of Fate. Time to keep going and eventually finish Simon's portion of the story.
Da, 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 da.
Oh, great, more harpies. Yeah, this is...
Welcome to the music.
This is also the moment where each chapter introduces like variants, more powerful variants, like palette swaps of mooks that you've seen previously. The enemy variety is still a thing that is present, so it's not nothing to complain much about. It's just that in these early stages of the game, there isn't that much to speak of. Simon's first chapter, has the duality of being still one of the more fun also to play, and one of the more engaging story-wise. But at the same time, it also has some limitation tied to it being a first chapter. So basically, it means your arsenal is not well expanded, there isn't much to do, there isn't much to explore, and so on. The other characters do get a bit better set pieces to go through, But as a result, they are tied to what the story has to do with them, which can get you invested or not. Anyway, more Lycans. Or they killed your daddy in the first game.
Yeah.
Not very nice fellows, are they?
Well,
Nope.
again, killing family members is a big no-no. It creates psychopaths like Boletta Bonnyhood. Anyway,
Yes?
I think I've noticed something, Tio, a difference between this and, the two main console games. I mean, aside from the fact, obviously, that this was the handheld one, but I feel like one thing that defines the Lords of Shadow trilogy as a whole, I would say, is the amount of risks taken with each installment. Like, I mean, the first one definitely took a lot of risks, but you could argue that they balanced them out with enough stuff that it still felt familiar enough. Lords of Shadow 2, on the other hand, took a lot of risks that, well, a lot of people
We're more
feel
polarizing.
Yeah. And they didn't all pan out as well. Surprisingly, though, this game does not feel like it takes the most risk. In fact, if anything, it feels like it takes the least amount of risks. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but in a way that, like, well, again, the atmosphere and feel of this game feels so different from the other two Lords of Shadow games. And not just because it's a handheld.
It's also because despite having the aesthetics and still the most of the combat scheme of the first game, and eventually also the second, it's still also more akin to the classic series in terms of type of gameplay, and structure, meaning that it's more of a hybrid than anything. Obviously, it's gonna be a bit more safe made. But keep in mind, Jova, it's pretty much clear that it was this that contributed to Nintendo to feel confident enough to having Mercury's Team being pitched for Metroid after they showcased their own versions of what they wanted to do.
And God bless
Oh, look at that! It's a ghost. You okay there, buddy? It's not Christmas yet. Go torment Scrooge sometime after.
Don't worry, he's gonna make it. Just
Eventually.
while he drags them trains.
You're
pretty
a
cute.
ghost,
It
just
always-
float over there.
It always happens when you actually enter the room, and I
Right,
always find it kind of
right.
amusing.
Whips, the chains of his guilt are weighing him down. It's not that easy.
Just,
But anyway,
again, those are just ghost chains.
Dwibs, you try being
know-
a ghost and being
You
weighed
know,
down by ghost chains.
This isn't a Christmas carol.
Again, they wanted to be cute in reference.
That's the
something.
thing, Dwibs. The chains are ghosts themselves, so yeah, they'll weigh down a ghost.
Oh shit! A possessed book.
Well,
not again.
I've played the first Harry Potter game. These are nothing.
Okay, the possessed book act in a more of a support kind of way. If you don't deal with them soon enough, they will start doing weird shit towards the regular enemies, like giving them an attack boost or actually a defensive shield. So always prioritize them as soon as you see them. Otherwise, your fight is gonna be much more difficult.
But yeah, back to my point about this game being
Good.
safe. It's not just the gameplay, but I also feel like the story. I mean, again, despite the weird story structure of this game, the story in this game is relatively straightforward, even with the twist overall here and there. Like, it doesn't... Okay, again, compare this to Lords of Shadow 1 and 2. Let's ignore the fact that those obviously have a higher sense of weight and scale because, well, higher production values and whatnot. But in this one, the story feels relatively straightforward to a case where, I mean... I'm not going to act like I wasn't entertained by it, but it's like about of like, well, it feels more like essentially more of what we saw from the main timeline. And you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing.
I mean, it is a game on a system with a lot more constraints, so they can't go full balls to the wall that they could on PS3 and 360.
Maybe that does tie to it as well. And mind you, I'm not saying it like this stuff is a bad thing. It's just something that I've noticed is weird. Like, in a way, this one feels like the odd man out. Oh, don't get me wrong. It still feels like it could take place in the universe of Lords of Shadow.
Go ahead, Java. Why not?
Weird. Randolfo Gandolfi decided to install retractable spurs on the end of the combat cross. The theory is simple. Brotherhood Knights chosen from amongst the elite could reach places inaccessible to others and thus pose more of a threat to the eyes of the castle.
Remember, according to the first game's lore, you know, the combat crosses were like standard notation for the more elite members of the Brotherhood, meaning that you have like this squad of Spider-Man-like people potentially jumping around and grappling onto things.
Beautiful.
Alright, we're about actually to get... there you go, an important cutscene actually, because we're actually about to have Simon make a weapon upgrade, believe it or not.
I
Does he
think
get
the best...
stabbed? Does the sword go through him? And he just walks off?
No. This isn't JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He's not...
I don't think Devil May Cry.
A combat cross, actually.
Huh.
But someone else wants it.
Is it the green one?
My master desires
And yeah, so the Necromancer is still voiced by Adrian Skiller. That's pretty neat for consistency. And apparently Zobek wants to keep it for some reason. Shit!
Yeah, it turns out Zobek's alive.
Oh yeah, if you saw the twist from the first game, you already know that. But why would Zobek want that weapon?
I do wonder, but yeah, again, that is a thing also about this game. This is the sort of game that feels like it's being made while there's obviously a bigger thing going on the side, because again, a lot of stuff in this game does pretty much build up stuff for Lords of Shadow 2.
Now, what you're saying is it's a side game.
Side note, also side note, the Necromancer boss fight works pretty much the same as the second phase of Spectre Knight, believe it or not.
That's great.
Also, you piece of shit.
So wait, it's based off the Sigma fight from X4 then?
Kinda. He loves to just throw that baton, you know, all over the place. And so...
This is obviously a nice little, you know, reference to how you usually fight death in the Castlevania games.
Not completely. Well, I can see what drama means, but not completely, because one thing that Dev love to use is to spam its fucking projectiles all over the place, and thankfully the Necromancer does not to do that. Thankfully.
Use holy water, you fool.
But yeah, I mean, and again, it's technically still not a side game because, again, it's recommended that you play this before Lords of Shadow 2. However, what's weird is that there's definitely a lot of stuff going on in the background of this plot, and it's weird. It feels like stuff that we should focus on, but we don't. Again, I'm not gonna act like the story of this game is bad, because no, what we actually are dealing with is fine, but it is weird how they constantly go, oh, by the way, this is going on. Oh, by the way, this is going on. She's preparing this. He's planning that. Yet we don't actually see them doing this. Again, it really feels like, again, this is more like the blueprints of, okay, get ready to see this in Lords of Shadow 2, idiot. You?
Yeah, he's fine.
There we go.
Pile drive!
That's not a pile drive.
Yeah, and he literally tears his chest
wrestling fan here.
And he literally tears his chest apart to get back the item.
Good. Very
Okay.
good. You
Thank you,
totally-
We
Emperor
got back
Palpatine.
the combat cross from Trevor, with Trevor, Simon's father, actually.
Okay,
So
okay.
now we
okay.
can actually use it to do the grappling maneuver that Deji was mentioning in the first part.
Given how later the story tries to act surprised that it's Trevor's combat cross, I can't help but feel like the gameplay mechanics unintentionally spoil elements
Yeah,
of the
they
story
do, because
before they're
Simon doesn't
properly
know it at
revealed.
this point. Let me tell. The remains of a weapon originally created by Rinaldo Gandolfi. Although it retains some of the original power, years of use has worn its magic metal, so much of its legendary offensive capabilities have been lost. However, the integrated shape of the links enables Simon to grab enemies from a distance and swing from many places in the environment.
Now
Does
we have
whatever a
one strong
vampire
enough to
killer
hold
can.
us. But yeah, again, it's such a weird element where the gameplay mechanics and text spoil points of a story before you get to it properly in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a weird oversight. Oh,
Yes, you
God,
also have... Go on, sorry, Joe.
can you imagine if Ace Attorney did stuff like that?
No, it did. Ace Attorney 4. That's exactly what happened when I found out the twist about Apollo.
Wait,
Oh,
I
yeah,
actually
that
don't know because Lips didn't show it. Where is actually spoiled, just to know.
I'll type it out.
Sure.
Well, to be fair, Des, we've already commented.
Yeah, about the audience
Oh,
who's
right,
watching.
yeah.
Also, it
probably-
might take too long anyway, so I'm just curious for later. Let me instead continue what I was mentioning from the previous part of it that you had asked, and I also mentioned in the beginning of the first part. Yes, around the same time, it was kind of interesting how coincidental there was. Warner Bros. Had their Montreal section, I think, release on the 3DS a spin-off tied to Batman Arkham Origins called Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate. It's a Batman Arkham game that instead adopts an actual Metroidvania approach. Again, it's interesting how we did that around the same time as this one. And much like with this, that one also got an HD port eventually on PS3, Xbox 360,
I've
and
heard
PC.
very, very, very polarizing
Okay,
and mixed reactions
It's
to
fine for
Blackgate.
what it wants to be. You're not gonna lose your sleep if you're missing it plot-wise or gameplay-wise. It's not like the worst thing ever, but it's still very bizarre that they decided to do that. And it's kind of inconsequential for the long scheme of things, because what it ultimately sets up to do is to build up more elements for the Suicide Squad that Arkham Origins already had established that are seemingly going nowhere. If
So what you're saying is that
the
it was more
actual
useful for
Rocksteady made...
Assault.
sorry?
What you're saying is that it was more useful for the Assault on Arkham
Nope,
movie.
because the people tied to Arkham Origins Blackgate do not even show up in Assault on Arkham. I think only Deadshot does.
They actually weren't building up. Remember, like before the Suicide Squad movie came out, so I was like,
Yes.
Warner Bros. Was trying to hype us up for them.
Yes.
Like they were in the Arrowverse, which they had to get scrapped. They had that Batman movie, the
Yeah,
post credit
Batman
scenes
Assault
for
on...
yeah.
Wait, the...
No, the
Which
post
is-
credits. Yeah, Assault on Arkham. Then he had the post credit scene for Arkham Origins, and then they were in Lego DC Heroes 2. Like they were really trying to make them the next big thing.
Yeah.
We
Even
were
now they're
supposed to
actually...
get a Suicide Squad game before.
I get the
Rocksteady.
feeling-
Yeah, it was actually reportedly cancelled. But in general, Dej, even nowadays, we seem to be still trying to do that with both, these the upcoming movie that by the time we're recording is actually about to come up in theaters, and the actual upcoming video game. Not to mention some more relevance in the comics as well.
I get the feeling Warner
Yes,
Brothers.
Pedro?
I get the
Quinn
feeling.
and Friends Unite.
I get the feeling Warner Brothers wants to have their own Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah.
Oh,
success.
that's exactly what they're trying to do. Come on
Considering,
now.
again, titled James Gunn and everything for the movie, I get the idea they wanted to milk the shit out of that, so...
That's exactly what they're
And to be
doing.
fair, it seemed, at least from what I heard, it's still a better, movie experience for Margot Robbie than Birds of Prey was. There is that, I suppose.
At least Maggie Robbie gets to be in a good DC movie for once.
But let me quickly explain also what just happened. Basically, I used this time to do some backtracking And as a result, I went back and went at that point to where my next destination is, getting back to that second element that we had seen, the Phantom of the Night Geralt Schneider. But to also quickly finish, Arkham Origins Blackgate, it's technically a harmless experience, and if I recall correctly, nowadays it costs very cheaply, like not. I don't think it surpasses the $30 mark as far as I recalled, and the PC version gets on sale frequently anyway. So if you're morbidly curious, check it out.
I feel like the thing about Blackgate is like, it's one of those weird games.
You know what it does, Jova, but the other games do not? An actual boss fight against the Joker, and a proper one at that. There's that.
True.
But there you go.
It's another stand. Where's the enemy user?
Apparently, gee, Simon, why do you get to play with 2 stands?
These aren't stands anymore. These are personas.
So now you have a Spirit of Schneider. Yeah, that's another reference we're adding in.
In this case, it's an offensive knight with a crossbow. So basically, it takes care of shit while you're doing other stuff.
Speaking of HD version ports of handheld games, how was Gravity Rush remastered?
It's fantastic. It's made by Bluepoint. That's all you need to know.
An ancient of one by most noble knight to defeat evil provides a powerful comrade to arms of valiant and brave. Michael Geralt Schneider's wore an arm with a devastating magic crossbow, always loaded with bolts. He will remain at the service of his allies. He will not rest until his final mission has been fulfilled. Go on, Pedro.
Let me put it this way, Dej. Anything that's made by Bluepoint, you can be assured that it's the best version of that game. That's literally how it is with them.
Alright, it's on sale for $9. I should get
They're
that.
they're known as the masters of the remaster for a reason.
But go on,
yeah, like I said, Blackgate is one of those games caught in that weird limbo of being not bad, but just unremarkable on all fronts, but not really being needed to understand other games in the franchise.
It's just there.
So,
it's literally just there.
It's basically the handheld equivalent of the console game. That's it. It's like, well, we have this game on consoles. Might as well take care.
That's
take
the thing, that
gameplay
gameplay-wise, while it does have staples from the other Arkham games, it takes this Metroidvania approach, which for a Batman game is rather unique, actually. Especially
Arkham games basically glorified Metroidvanias.
And they're more open world than anything.
Asylum is.
Yeah, I suppose in that kind of sense. But Arkham Origins Blackgate takes the more traditional Metroidvania approach to the actual 2.5D one, but still like on a 2D plane. But I honestly argue it works, and it also has some replayability value because you can actually, after the initial level, you can actually play the 3 main branches of a Blackgate prison in the order you prefer. And depending on what you do, you will tackle things, in a different order, and even the outcome will be slightly different in the sense of the last main person that you will face, which will slightly change one of the final cutscenes that you get. It's not like something, particularly different, but it's, again, neat the way they actually accommodate to the order that the player chooses. These things that you see in the background with the giant mouths are basically teleporters. They're the equivalent of the coffin. Sorry, not the coffin. The coffins were the save points. The actual, teleporting statues or platforms that were present in Symphony of the Night. Again, another creation from the person responsible also for the Trap of the Castle. There we go. I forgot if I mentioned, but the game certainly did. Whenever you're in trouble, the red arrow indicates the general direction you're supposed to go. It has still the GPS capabilities for where you're in the actual, part of a level that has the marker that you need to go. But where you're not, or in a different place, it usually generally regards the nearest exit with that red marker. So at least you have a general idea where to go. I'm okay with this system. I actually don't mind the fact that it's not super cryptic, but it's not super hand-holding either. So at least it's nice enough for a player to actually go around and explore, but still know when to get back to what the main plot needs.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, to address your Ace Attorney example without spoiling the audience. Technically, that wasn't so much at spoiling because you are technically supposed to do that. It's just a matter of whether or not you do that before getting all the other dialogue you can get. Technically,
before getting all the other dialogue.
Well,
So
technically,
it's one of those. I did it in a way that the game didn't want me to do it because I was so lost and confused. I was like, "Whoops."
Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong. That said, it's a thing you are supposed to do, so at least it makes sense. Whereas again, in this game, you literally have gameplay mechanics that spoil bits of a story here. Like, and again, it's weird that they spoil it blatantly, but then the story acts like it's a big surprise. Like, yeah, I get it, dramatic irony and whatnot, but why not just, have it be somewhat vague about who these spirits or who the stuff belongs to, and then drop on it later, and then, update the data logs for them. Kind of like what Final Fantasy XIII does.
Well, it's also the thing. Some of the data log entries, particularly the enemy entries, are actually something that you actually get to obtain as collectibles on your own. It's just that the item description for your gadgets is something that it's actually gotten when you actually get that item. It's weird.
Well, I totally get that,
Yeah.
but you'd think that they would at least give them different or more vague names that don't give away bits of the plot automatically.
I don't understand, honestly, Joe, because even in the previous and the next game, instead, the enemy entries gets, immediately updated as soon as you encounter them, or at least kill one of them. I get the idea we wanted to add another layer of collectibles here, but it's kind of a shame, because as I demonstrated in the previous game, and I will also show in the next one, the flavor text accompany these actual entries is pretty fun, and engaging.
It goes back to my feeling of how different this game is from the other two. Like, it's not just, the differences, but it also feels like there's different design philosophies. Kind of like a different team or some different people were working on this. Again, it's still just been
It's still actually Mercury Steam Drova. I get the idea. You can't remember, Lotus Shell 2 and these were developed around the same time. So I get the idea this was like a B team kind of thing. Like only a couple of the people involved actually did manage to work on it. Dave Cox was still one of the producers and one of the writers. So it's not like the key people were absent from this. It was just, I guess, in a matter of actual programming.
How weird is it that this game, again, made by the same people, but again, it feels so drastically different. And again, not just because of the 2D gameplay or whatnot. Like, the design philosophies do feel drastically different. Like, maybe it had to do with the varying amount of control Konami had on the situation between the two games, but it is...
It might.
Again, it's interesting. At the very least, it's very interesting.
Also, just for the record, for mentioning, since I actually did trim them down a bit, the loading screens do not take too long. I actually don't know how long they took on the 3DS version, but in this, they don't overstay too much their welcome. It's more of a fact that since you're jumping between areas this much, they can get a bit intrusive, but it's nothing, that will make me lose my patience about it.
Mm-hmm. Up we go, further up the castle.
Yeah, where we're supposed to go next, if I recall correctly, is just to jump up towards the tower that eventually leads us to Dracula's throne room. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of sucks that the PS4 library isn't backwards compatible with PS3. They use Digital Store.
Mm-hmm. There you go. What I was searching was this particular teleport, if I recall correctly. But go on the edge. Sorry.
I was just like, oh, maybe I should try this out. I was like, no, it's not there. Then, when Jova mentioned Final Fantasy 13, I tried checking that. I was like, wow, they didn't remaster that?
No,
Again, Pedro mentioned
honestly, that
somewhere else. I think you were still present. We speculate that it's still only a matter of time before Square actually does get releases a trilogy HD collection of
either that.
It's backwards compatible on Xbox One.
Basically.
And the PC versions are now stable. It's just that the Sony console, and even on Switch, you think the base versions of the game running at stable 30 will be able to be released on Switch these days.
Part of me,
Well, you see, if there's enough fan demand, we'll do that. Just like how
No,
we're
Square
doing.
doesn't really
That's the
do
problem,
that.
Dej. There is no fan demand for now.
You'd be surprised how many people love Lightning as a character, Pedro. I'm surprised as well.
I mean, I'm not quite sure there's a. Okay. I genuinely check out the internet in general. I have not seen massive demand for 13. Now, okay, I'm not saying that I haven't seen demand at all, but by usual standards, I have not seen massive demand for 13 to make a comeback. Like, look, 13 is a mess in more ways than one.
Okay, but how's the gameplay? Is it slow or?
It's terrible. I'll explain to you later after the job is done.
It depends on which 13 game you're talking about. The first 13 game, linear hallway. The 13-2 tried to fix the problems, but created new problems along the way. Lightning Returns actually had the closest thing to good gameplay.
But at that point, it basically,
everything.
at that point, it also alienated itself mostly from anything Final Fantasy related. It was more of a Valkyrie profile game in disguise.
Let me put it like this, It's the 13 franchise, and yes, it pretty much is the same franchise.
I know. We talk about Final Fantasy 7 here.
Basically, it imploded upon itself to the point where there are varying fans between each of the installments, and I mean like fans who consider them in like different continuities. There are the fans who think that it should have stopped at 13 because 13 had a fine enough ending, which 13-2 then ruined and forced you to get Lightning Returns if you wanted a good ending after charging you for the true ending DLC, which Tio had a good rant about.
So is Wrath.
No, we had an entire commentary where I explained what the actual problems with the DLC of Azura's Wrath were instead. They were not the same.
Granted, it still sucked that happened, but at least Azura's Wrath had more of a noble reason for it to be that way, whereas 13-2 was just, we want more money. Which you could maybe argue was also the case with Capcom, but at least Azura's Wrath's trending gave us a proper conclusion as opposed
like I said, CyberConnect 2 had basically their hands tied and originally wanted to have that plan for a sequel instead.
But anyway, back to my point. There's the original 13 fans. Then there are fans of 13-2 who think that 13-2 had something going with improving the original 13, but of course were disappointed when Lightning Returns threw that stuff out the window. So then they pretty much rue Lightning Returns. Lightning Returns has the smallest faction of fans for a lot of reasons. 1, the game's terrible. 2, it has the worst story of the bunch. 3, goddamn that ending. 4, goddamn that ending. And 5, that ending is so bad that Square are still trying to copyright people from showing it.
Yeah, that basically
Joe, I don't think you talked about the ending enough. Can you go into that?
That's the thing.
Let me put it in the simplest way possible. It literally has a moment where the characters in a black room stand in tall around the iconic symbol of the franchise, the blue glowing crystal, the perpendicular crystal that is so shining bright and usually represents hope and salvation for the world. They literally says we don't need this, and they break it. I think the statement is pretty clear.
Not just that.
Not only that, Des, let me put it like this. Lightning spends most of that game being Jesus, only to then get upgraded to being God in the end.
Basically.
And then she's the goddess that walk among all of us common earthlings.
Because
probably waiting for David Cage because she's literally in France.
Because they imply that the Final Fantasy folk are coming to our world.
And like I said, Jova, there are actually a couple of novels that talk about the aftermath of Lightning Returns, which are tied to these journalists, interviewing characters who are basically the reincarnations of a character of the 13 trilogy. And it's so cringy what we do with that.
Basically, we were instructing Dej about the guidebook to the different factions of fans of the 13 franchise and why they're so divided. Needless to say, Lightning Returns has the least amount of fans. Oh, don't get me wrong, there are some diehard fans. There are people who swear up and down that Lightning Returns is the only good game of that trilogy, and you know what? If you're talking about the gameplay, well, actually, more specifically, the battle
system or so, yeah.
Fair beans, but other words, no. Everything else in that game is pretty much terrible, except for ironically enough, Snow, who's become a better character along the way. Yeah, of all the characters who pretty much becomes better with each installment, that's Snow, who's pretty much the inverse of Saz.
And they literally had to deconstruct his character to make it work.
Yeah, basically.
It's kind of sad. It's the whole broken ace kind of archetype of him wanted to be an hero and everything. Now he's being reduced to a shell of itself and he's literally telling, what am I supposed to do? Like,
and then there's Lightning herself. Like, Lightning goes from being, let's be honest, a jerk-ass for a good portion of the first game, to then suddenly being a bright-eyed hero, which is more or less them trying to copy Cloud's development from 7.
Okay, I will talk more about this because now we're about to get not actually a boss fight, but a particular kind of level. Again, it seems that the person who built all this contraption in the castle is kind of a trickster that loves to have fun with people, because now
That's the Joker.
We're kind of stuck in a fanfare. Around and around it goes. Move along or you'll get electrocuted.
Yep.
Also, for a cute reference to the heads that you see mounted on the fanfare, a reference to other monsters from the classic series. That's pretty cute.
I'll just say this: I think it's poetic that, of course, the games that Tio and Pedro used to introduce me to the franchise were 7 and 13, arguably the heaven and hell of the series.
That's the thing.
These are such great friends.
That's the thing. Well, that's the thing, Jova.
Someone is working on something else under there. But
the frame rate.
Yeah, well, the frame rate is dying again. No time to think much because things are speeding up. Shit.
You were saying, Pedro?
But that's the thing. I don't know, Jova, for me personally, sometimes starting out with the worst the franchise means I can only go up after that. So it actually has benefited me. It actually has benefited me personally.
Oh yeah. Look. I know. I hold no ill will. In fact, if anything, I had some sick sense of fun commentating on Final Fantasy.
And remember, we still have to redo the first one at some point, because
possibly 13-2.
Nah, 13-2 is fine.
The first one is fine enough. The first one is fine enough. Mostly because again we had some of the problems, particularly connection or
the first one had a lot of issues. Yeah.
And particularly some peculiar moments where it kind of requires a bit more dissecting, like Saz hinted suicide. That's
okay. Basically, Saz is the best character of 13. Toriyama realized this and decided to punish Saz for that in the sequels.
I actually have one particular bit that I want to bring up, actually. You'll see this.
You okay, Simon?
Okay.
Brief.
You know what? That was just a good exercise segment, and
hello.
Don't come any closer.
This mysterious figure, which we'll meet later, is voiced by Richard Madden. You may know him mostly for being Robb Stark in Game of Thrones, but he's also playing a role in the upcoming movie, the Eternals.
How did you come upon it?
Sure, that's totally coming out on time and not being delayed.
This mysterious figure in the shadows who tells us not to come any closer. It's almost like he doesn't want us to recognize him or something.
Even though the lighting completely makes us see what he looks like.
Richard. That's where I heard the name Richard Madden. He played John Reed in Rocket Man.
He came to destroy the
basically. When we watch Bohemian Rhapsody and then Rocket Man, I'll tell you about the weird disconnect that Dexter Fletcher has when he had John Reed in his movies.
But yeah, thanks to these we get to know that Simon actually gets to know that he's wielding Trevor's combat cross.
So it turns out that the attack that killed Simon's mother
was orchestrated by Dracula.
Well, not just that, but apparently it was done in retaliation of his father apparently going to try and kill Dracula.
What makes you
But that's weird, though. His father was just one man. How could that alone anger Dracula enough to suddenly do this.
I mean, Dracula is kind of a petty loser, as we know in general, and April at the end of the first game was clearly not in the best mood.
Oh, true. But the point of that
Thankfully, this
first
mysterious figure is gonna actually help us when the time comes, so that's reassuring, I suppose.
Also, too, of course, Dracula can be petty, but let's not forget the point of Lords of Shadow 1 was that, despite everything, Gabriel would be able to retain the evil enough so that he wouldn't become, as bad as the monsters that he had hunted.
Not exactly. Right now, we're at the point where he's kind of a dick. Remember, he spent an entire game being manipulated by others and not having anything to show by it. So, at the end of the day, when he was actually, fully imbued with the power of the Forgotten One and everything, he essentially snapped at that point. There was no more evil in it. We will see. We will see how that point pans out at the end of this game and in Lords of Shadow 2, because there is, it's not that simple, obviously. But for the time being, this leads Dracula to have his classic characterization of being an asshole who destroys village and has its monsters kill and maim everywhere.
I think my one criticism is that I do feel like I wish we could have seen a bit more steps to him becoming the absolute scourge that is Dracula. Again, seeing how he puts together his posse, how he really comes to the conclusion that he needs to attack these people, because the ends of Lords of Shadow assumed that, the ending of Lords of Shadow gave the implication that he just wanted to be left alone, essentially. So I do, and yes, we get why he did do what he does later in this game, but we don't get the reason for his initial attacks, or at the very least, the progression to that. Again, it's not a deal breaker, but it is stuff that I do wish they could have gone the extra mile to add in, and who knows, maybe they were planning to in, Lords of Shadow 3 with flashbacks and whatnot, but
I get the idea, Joe, that instead the original plan was that Lords of Shadow 2 was, you piece of shit, was supposed to be instead to just be focusing about the actual, the actual past, and then Lords of Shadow 3 was supposed to be the actual conclusion in modern times, kind of like of an actual epic trilogy. But that's just my speculation. Keep going, Pedro.
Okay. Here's the basic gist of how time travel works in Final Fantasy 13-2, Dej. There's a little point where they establish a plot point, and keep in mind, Dej, this is supposed to be taken 100% seriously. I'm not joking when I say this. The game literally establishes, Dej, that changing the future changes the past. Yes, they literally go out of their way to literally break any kind of possible logic you can have with time travel.
They try to have these weird, four-dimensional kind
time
of
travel works.
Exactly.
They try to have these kind of, unconventional type of narrative where, similar to the Moffat era of Doctor Who, ironically enough, where we do get to see characters from future events going back to our characters' point of view past, so obviously the two parties are confused, which leads to further misunderstanding and everything. So that is kind of it's interesting as a concept, but the game executes things so poorly, so badly with stuff like that line that Pedro just mentioned, that it ultimately becomes a gigantic mess.
And let me just finish though.
May not. Okay, can I just say one quick bit?
Go ahead.
13-2 may not be the worst story. I still think that honor belongs to Lightning Returns. But man, 13-2 in a lot of ways feels like the most frustrating, most miserable,
honestly, I will argue
most unaccomplished of the stories.
Honestly, I will argue Lightning Returns.
It's not the worst then.
I will argue Lightning Returns is a bit better, just because not just because there's better stuff with snow, but also at the very least there's more. 13-2 is just so boring and insulting.
Pedro, you've literally changed your tune, because I remember back in the day how you definitely swore up and down that despite everything of 13-2, Lightning Returns was definitely the worst story of the bunch.
Well, okay, let me put it this way. I guess I didn't explain myself well. Like, the ending is definitely the worst, just because of how full of itself and in franchise insulting it is. But if I'm going to take away my personal feelings aside and just judge them objectively, 13-2, I will argue, is the worstly written, because 13-2 is not even that has nothing even resembling entertainment in that story. It's nothing.
Like this,
it's nothing but boredom, misery, and confusion.
Also pointlessness. The game literally mocks you for actually 100%ing it.
Yeah, for the record, Edge, the game literally makes itself pointless by the end. Like the game is literally a waste of your time story-wise. Go on,
Let me
Joe.
put it like this. 13-2 pretty much ends with Steph going to the status quo, not just of the start of the game, but pretty much like how things were at the start of the original 13. Sarah is once again dead/missing by the time of Lightning returns. Gee, just like was her predicament in the first 13 game, everyone's all split up and definitely at their lowest point. Again, like in Final Fantasy 13, I think the only difference is that Vanilla's matured and,
well, she's still kind of an idiot because she does willingly go through the whole cult thing, and Sansi is definitely more miserable than in the first game.
Oh, God, just poor Sam.
Yeah, like we mentioned, Edge, the game as it's actually one of the Final Fantasy first time actually introduced back an actual, character of African American, appearance, and it's kind of the entire trilogy is kind of dunking on him on multiple levels.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I was bird for quite a while because reasons. How did we go from talking about Castlevania to Final Fantasy?
Deji was looking into it in the store, I think.
Just see about backwards compatible games, because I was looking at this and then Joe.
Deji, I got a minute. I literally had that exact same conversation with the others not too long ago.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway because we're actually reaching the final boss of Simon's chapter. So let's get to it. By having a dynamic entrance into an idyllic garden. We're supposed to be inside. Oh, hello.
You can trust me.
I have an ass.
This character is voiced by Eleanor Howell.
Come closer, Simon.
Let's see. She's also she was in Doctor Who: The Eternity Clock, the video game that was released around the same time. But she hasn't done much. She was in 2 episodes of Casualty.
You have traveled so far.
We're in the Amazons.
She's supposed to be the succubus, Edge.
They're definitely hospitable.
That hat looks a bit
It's Rita Repulsa's hat. Like, seriously.
Actually, Pedro, I thought you were going to say that she's Maleficent's more horny sister.
What are they sitting on?
No, that's the thing, Joe, but that hat reminds me more of Rita's hat. Doesn't it to you, Dubs?
After 1,000 years, I'm free.
Yeah.
Now time to conquer Earth.
Yeah, basically. It literally looks like Rita's hat.
I don't like Elizabeth Banks' portrayal of Rita in that 2017 movie.
Oh, I love Elizabeth Banks as Rita.
Sorry, lady. My Virgin Shield is activated.
I've still got that plan in mind for when we do the movie. I'm gonna get a box of Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yes.
The movie.
Yes.
Over here, if you get a vaccination, you can get free Krispy Kreme.
Final boss for Simon is the succubus, and when you actually deplete her health periodically, she gives the sook to some of her actual female slaves to regain actual health. So it's a battle of endurance. Worst of all, she also creates a shield bubble similar to the one of Shaft in Symphony of the Night.
So this battle's gonna take forever then?
Nah, don't worry.
There's the thing about the succubus. Lady, your plan might have worked if you weren't so obvious about sucking his energy.
You blow your load too much, too early.
She's really horny, okay? She couldn't keep it in.
She might as well have just said, "I'm going to suck you dry."
I mean, Danger. The succubus in Symphony of the Night wasn't that much more intelligent either. Like, she went through the whole plan about, trying to faking out Alucard's mother's death, but then, there you go, but then got outed very easily.
Yeet!
Sorry.
Oh no, Simon's homophobic. No, wait, what?
No.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's
Anyway,
bad.
there you go. Again, it's just mostly a test of endurance, especially because, again, Simon doesn't have that many tools at disposal, so the game is a bit more merciful in not throwing too much at you.
I got it.
The later chapters final bosses will be a bit more, engaging in what they do.
Not to mention, Deji, this woman is a complete psycho who will, who uses and abuses everyone that she So not a single relationship involving this woman should be allowed. To be honest, she will kill people.
Fine.
Again, though,
You
are
must
we not-
kiss them with consent, woman. You
That's
must be
it, though.
no making out before marriage.
That said, though, are we
Yes,
that
sir.
much better for yeeting the women that she's trying to make out with and
Yeah.
drain? Like, for all we know,
I mean,
those
they
women
were-
break their necks and
Also, where
Yeah,
did
exactly.
the come from?
As far as she's concerned, everybody around her is just gasoline. So
I know Sam was face like, duh. Did you went for that episode of Captain and the Game Master, where
Oh my
Sam
God.
usually has a dirty face?
oh my god, now there are 3 of those things.
Find the correct one.
and you'll get a prize.
Is there an obvious who's who?
I forgot actually. Very much like in all those similar situations, there is an easy way to actually rant the correct one out. But I forgot. It's been actually a while since I played the game.
Well, I'm stuck then.
Basically, there you go. When you find the correct one, the shield actually does not bounce on you. Instead, it actually does actually gets damage. Not this one. Not this one either.
Or number
There we
3?
Also, Oscar Buddy, I'm okay usually with their music, but this one seems a bit more subpar.
I guess it's to try and go with the succubus
See-
theme.
Rest assured
guys,
that by the
ready?
time of Lords of Shadow 2, Oscar actually gives them a lot of new and very good compositions.
Guys, what are you talking about? I like to sit on my keyboard as the best genre of music.
I don't think this sounds that bad. Again,
Especially
it just-
because it seems still to be orchestral in some kind of way.
It's more like it's just more subdued, and again, it's supposed to sound more sensual to go with the theme of the succubus.
Essential.
Yes.
Tia, you should have just played Morgan's theme from Darkstalkers.
Which version?
The Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
Again, there are so many remixes at this point.
I thought you were gonna say Morgan's theme from Ace Attorney 2.
And that's because he technically pronounced it wrong. It's Morrigan.
Morgan. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, too late. Sorry. And just like that. Yeah, let's actually get to kill her first.
Who sent you?
Jesus. And just like that,
Glory
the
discretion
illusion crumbles to reveal
We were in Dracula's
the
throne
room all
this
along.
entire
Is she
Gabriel, were you enjoying watching this? You
Yes.
cheeky perv.
Wait. Is she Billie Jean from JoJo that she can create an illusion?
Yes.
And yes, Robert Carlyle reprises his role.
Belmont.
He's actually very fine again.
I am Simon Belmont. I have come to avenge the death of my parents.
Another thing that I heard is that the 3DS version had very terrible mouth movements. So it's one thing that they try to fix in this HD version.
Hey, when you say destroy, what are you gonna do? Expel him?
Perhaps. That relic you carry holds no power over me, young Belmont.
You know,
He's
Drax,
not even kidding.
Your father died
Remember,
while
Gabriel is still God's chosen one. Holy weapons don't do much on him.
You cannot kill me. You will die in vain, just as your
You
father
can't
did.
kill me, I'm immortal.
But we have to save the actual fight for the end of chapter 2 because we're having the arrival of a character which will be tied to in the actual second chapter of the game.
Let's do it.
No, Patrick Stewart is not in this game.
Hey,
Alucard!
Yep. But wait,
You want to see how what he looks like and how he actually plays? Well, stay tuned for Chapter 2 on that.
What a rip.
See ya.
Yeah.
Alright.